Is the Series S to blame for this major game delay? This reporter exposes Xbox's strategy. Does Xbox even need Activision Blizzard? Let's discuss. What's up, guys, and welcome back to Xbox Ready, the YouTube channel that works to keep you up to date on all things Xbox. I'd really appreciate it if you went and checked out my anime channel, Rainami. This week, I'm posting a video about Sakura from Naruto and how we should stop the hate, man. We should stop hating Sakura. We should appreciate her instead. First up, are we getting a remaster of Fallout New Vegas? Well, according to Tim Kaine, legendary dude, lead engineer on the original Fallout, worked on many games since then, still killing it at Obsidian. Tim recently was part of an interview that was celebrating the next-gen update The Outer Worlds was getting, and he spoke very briefly on a remastered version of Fallout New Vegas. Long story short, he wants it. He wants to have it happen. Fallout New Vegas, legendary game. To many people, it is the best Fallout game, but when it first came out, reviewers were super critical on the engine the game was built on. It was the same one they used for Fallout 3, and at that point, it was already showing its age, and along with that engine came a slew of technical problems, goofy animations, desync issues. It was kind of a mess at first, standard like Bethesda RPG launch stuff, and with that in mind, Tim was saying it'd be really cool to have a remastered version of Fallout. That way, the entire focus could be on the story that they were trying to make, rather than like, oh, these bugs and technical issues. And yeah, that would be cool, but Fallout New Vegas, it's like, we love that game despite those issues. We love that game because the story is amazing, and the side quests are better than a lot of these other games as main quests. So would a remaster really be necessary? And while we're on the subject, is it really necessary to give The Outer Worlds a next-gen update? No hate on that game. I really enjoyed that game as well, but it's like, it just came out a couple of years ago. I know a lot of people are hungry for a new Fallout experience, whether it be Fallout 5 or a sequel to Fallout New Vegas, but from my understanding, that might be a little bit farther down the road than people expect. Bethesda is obviously working on shipping Starfield right now, and I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge at this point that after that, they're going to be moving on working full-time on the Elder Scrolls 6. Obsidian, besides this Outer Worlds update, is working on Avowed, and then it's going to be working on the Outer Worlds 2. Bethesda and Obsidian, they have a lot of people, so it's possible that they have some people working on very early stuff for a new Fallout game, but I can't imagine anything major happening at either studio until they ship those projects I just talked about. This whole situation also has me thinking about Xbox remasters in general. Obviously, remasters are kind of cool now, I guess. Like, they get a lot of flack, but they sell really well. PlayStation obviously has shipped out 3 versions of The Last of Us Part 1, a remaster and a remake, and they seem to be doing pretty well. If Xbox was to remaster or remake something like Oblivion, would they see the same results? I mean, I personally would kill for a remake of Oblivion. That is my favorite Elder Scrolls game. I would literally do a backflip out of happiness. But since Game Pass is in the equation, I wonder if Xbox is like, nah, wouldn't really be worth it when looking at the effort put in versus the return. Let's just add frame and resolution boosts to the old games and then set these teams to working on new experiences to put on Game Pass. Either way, I highly recommend that you check out this interview with Tim, Leonard, and Eric. It's on The Gamer. It's very interesting stuff if you have the time to check it out. Next up, let's talk about this Twitter thread by Derek Strickland. Thank you, Fabrizio Ball, for tagging me on this on Twitter. So Derek works at a website called Tweaktown, which is a website we've talked about before. They post a lot of interesting stuff in terms of gaming and tech content on there. In this thread, Derek breaks down the finances and the strategies of all 3 of the major platform holders. That's Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. Right off the bat, he makes the assertion that Xbox, revenue-wise, performs more closely to Nintendo, but operationally, it is more similar to PlayStation. When it comes to Xbox and all of the platform holders, their goals are obvious, right? It's to sell hardware, sell games, and sell their subscription services. He reminds us that yes, while Xbox sells their consoles at a loss, they make a lot of their money, the majority of their money, from selling games and selling Game Pass subscriptions and subscriptions to Xbox Live, other services like that. We've talked about on this channel before how Xbox is kind of getting crafty this generation, that they're kind of moving away from the straight up console console sale race and exploring other options, putting their games on PC, exploring game streaming, focusing more on the ecosystem versus just console sales. And apparently that approach is going well. They hit an all-time high in terms of active monthly users, according to Derek's data. We're sitting at 120 million active users on Xbox as of 2023. Game Pass has been steadily growing in subscribers, and you can see on this graph as well that revenue from games and services has been steadily rising as well, even after the introduction of Game Pass. There are some annoying things in this data as well. Both PlayStation and Xbox make a ton of money on game add-ons and microtransactions, so those probably aren't going anywhere in the foreseeable future. He also shows off the fact that Nintendo is kind of a unicorn in this situation, because they make most of their money off of first-party titles versus third-party titles for Xbox and PlayStation, and they also make a profit on their hardware versus Xbox, who serves their consoles at a loss. Switch Online is also getting more subs than Xbox Game Pass, which I thought was really interesting, because in many ways it's like the opposite of Game Pass. Game Pass, the whole thing is like day and date, get these new games the day they come out on Game Pass, and Nintendo was like, we're gonna give you guys old games, like really old games, like games off the Super Nintendo, N64, Game Boy, and people are just like eating that up. And whenever I see stuff like this, I just cannot help but think, and you guys are not gonna lie, every time I talk about this, there's someone in the comments like, what are you talking about? You're talking crazy, Ray. But I really wonder if there's a future where Xbox doesn't really focus too much on selling people consoles and just giving them the games and services directly to them. And again, I know that makes people mad because people are like, what is Xbox without the Xbox? And yes, that makes sense, but yeah, you gotta think that there's someone at Xbox, at Microsoft, that's looking at these numbers and it's like, okay, we're not beating our competitors in the hardware sales race, and we're also losing money on every console that we sell, but we're making really good money on just delivering people our games and having them subscribe to Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold. Is there a scenario where we can cut out this weird middleman and just do what makes us money, giving people games and getting them subscribed to our stuff? Do I think that's gonna happen tomorrow or even by the end of this generation? No, because obviously the easiest way to get people to buy Xbox games and subscribe to Xbox stuff is if they have an Xbox, of course. But in the future, as the PC part of the Xbox ecosystem grows, maybe if cloud gaming is sort of comparable to a console experience. I say this because it's already happened in the other sectors of the entertainment industry. People were like, oh, dope, I don't need to buy anything else, a CD player, a cassette player, an MP3 player to listen to my music. I could just stream it to devices that I already have. Bet, I'm gonna do that. Oh, you're telling me I don't need a freaking box to watch my favorite movies and television? I could just stream them to devices that I already have? Bet, I'm gonna do that. Why not the video game industry? Why not Xbox? And I'm not saying that line of thinking would work for the other platforms, because PlayStation, they don't have to worry about it. They're the market leader. They have a huge install base, and they're starting to migrate their stuff over to PC. And when you look at Nintendo, their hardware is what sets them apart. They make money off of it. The Nintendo Switch, being able to take it with you and have it on the dock. The Wii, obviously that revolutionized a lot. The Wii U, not so much. But listen, all I'm saying, in the future, there may be a scenario when we're talking about Xbox as just the brand and not so much associating it with a specific console. Now it's time for your regularly scheduled Activision Blizzard update. It's the biggest thing going on for Xbox right now, for better and for worse. As we know, Microsoft is being challenged on all sorts of fronts when it comes to this acquisition. They're getting sued by the FTC, the CMA, and the EU have come out and opposed this deal. But according to Phil Spencer, they are not sweating it, man. The Times asked Phil Spencer what would happen to Xbox if this deal did not go through for whatever reason. He said, "This is an important acquisition for us. It's not some linchpin to the long term. Xbox will exist if this deal does not go through." And he even says that he welcomes the challenge. He enjoys educating regulators when it comes to the video game industry. He says, "Most of the time in my career at Xbox, as I've met with government regulators, there's been a real lack of knowledge about the games industry. I've appreciated spending time with them and in certain cases helping to educate. I think for a lot of the regulators, this is the first time that they've looked at this industry," which is totally true. I envision like a bunch of like old or middle-aged people like sitting on this council, and there's just not people that I associate with having a lot of video game knowledge. But I totally agree with Phil Spencer in this statement. There was a lot to be excited for as an Xbox fan before all this stuff about acquiring Activision Blizzard. The 20th anniversary of Xbox. Times were good, man. Everyone was having a great time. We were all looking forward to the future. They just dropped an early version of Halo Infinite. Forza Horizon 5 came out, and we were all looking towards the future at these games like Contraband, Fable, Starfield, Redfall, the Indiana Jones game, Hellblade 2, Avowed, Outer Worlds 2, and many, many, many more stuff. Like, they have Bethesda, guys, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what they can offer. But if it's anything like Hi-Fi Rush, I am super excited. There's so much to look forward to if you're an Xbox fan. It may not always seem that way because of, things getting delayed, things not always going as planned. It's already better than it was a couple of years ago. I cannot wait to see what they do in the future. And if they acquire Activision Blizzard, great. It would be so cool to see some of the other stuff that has been sidelined in favor of Call of Duty and these other titles be brought back under Microsoft's leadership. And if they don't, that would be a huge bummer, and of course Microsoft would have to pay a huge fine. But I still think Xbox has something left in the tank, even if they don't close this deal. Next up, let's talk about another legendary RPG. I'm talking about Baldur's Gate. Okay, so last week, Baldur's Gate 3 got a release date. Yay, August 31st, 2023. But it was revealed at the State of Play. So they were like, oh, it's PlayStation 5, baby. And people were like, whoa, hold up. Wait a minute. What about the Xbox version? What's the deal here? Is this another money hat situation? Another year of exclusivity? PlayStation trying to keep this game off of Xbox consoles and leave Xbox fans in the cold? And then Larian Studios came out and said, no, that's not the case. Here's what they said. They said, following yesterday's PlayStation 5 and release date announcement, we've clarified that right now we're planning to release Baldur's Gate for PC, Mac, GeForce Now, and PS5. That said, we have no exclusivity for which platforms we can bring BG3 to, or when, and will announce support for additional platforms if and when they're ready. We're seeing varied interpretations on what that means, so we wanted to clarify further. We've had an Xbox version of Baldur's Gate 3 in development for some time now. We've run into some technical issues in developing the Xbox port that have stopped us from feeling 100% confident in announcing it until we're certain we found the right solutions. Specifically, we've been unable to get split-screen co-op to work at the same standard on both Xbox Series X and S, which is a requirement for us to ship. Oh no, guys, say it ain't so, man. The Series S just cannot catch a break. Now let me say before I go any further with this, y'all know I love the Series S. I own one, I have the X, I have the S, and I think it is a great machine, especially for the price. I got mine at $240, and that game runs Cyberpunk pretty well. I'm pretty impressed with how it runs Hogwarts Legacy as well. I've played Forza on it, I've played Chivalry 2 on it, and it's pretty decent, man. If I tried to build a PC that runs those games for $240, that's impossible, man. It's impressive what this thing can achieve at the price point that it's at. But more and more, we are hearing these third-party developers being like, it's hard to work with the Series S. The last time we had this conversation was when Gotham Knights came out. Everyone was pointing at the Series S because this developer from Rocksteady was like, the Series S sucks, people don't want to work with it, blah, 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 and then he got bullied off Twitter. Well, it's not really a similar situation, but sort of similar because it seems to be a theme here that it's struggling with these multiplayer games. Gotham Knights, obviously the focus was on co-op and that you don't have to be tethered to each other, you can explore Gotham freely, independent of your teammates. And now they're saying they can't get split screen to work on the Series S. And honestly, guys, that makes sense to me. Yes, the Series S can do really cool things on these single player games, sometimes multiplayer games like Forza and Chivalry, like I was just talking about. But for any of you guys who are like me, who tried to run Borderlands 3 on a base Xbox One, you kind of have an idea of how the Series S could be struggling to run two versions of the game at the same time for Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I gotta be honest, guys, I am a little worried. Xbox has sort of this problem where, for whatever reason, games skip over their platform, whether it be a deal with Sony or like these JRPGs that just decide not to come to Xbox because they don't sell well, quote unquote. I don't want third-party developers to have another reason to skip the Xbox platform. I personally don't know how they would go about fixing that though. Like, the cat's already out of the bag. Millions of Series S consoles have already been sold. And again, I love my Series S, but I'm not sure if Xbox should explore the possibility of maybe dropping the Series S requirement when it comes to third-party developers specifically. The first party, they seem to be pretty confident that they could bring their titles, make them playable on this X, on the S, on PC. Like, is it time to have an Xbox Series S Plus? Is it time to release a digital version of the X and phase out the Series S? I don't know what the correct answer is in this situation because, again, so many Series S consoles have already been sold, and I can't imagine a better way to piss off all those people who bought the console than by saying like, oh, we're gonna leave it behind, we're gonna abandon it. Should they have just released a digital Series X from the jump, from launch? I'm going back and forth on that now because on one end, the majority of console sales for Xbox right now are Series S consoles. The Series S is kind of carrying them almost, outside of Game Pass, of course. But as we go on into this generation, are the memory constraints, the GPU constraints of the Series S, are they going to continue being a problem? Are we going to keep getting more news about like, oh, we're having trouble developing this game for the Series S compared to the X and the PlayStation 5, and we can't ship it on Xbox until we figure it out? I can see that being a huge source of frustration for the fan base and for the video game industry in general. But hopefully Xbox has something planned going forward to avoid these kinds of situations. I don't know if it's a new Series S, a more powerful Series S, a digital Series X, but I kind of feel like they wouldn't have released the console in the first place if they weren't confident that it could carry them throughout this generation. Anyways, guys, that's all the news I have for today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready. I'd really appreciate it if you went and checked out my anime channel, Rainami. This week, I'm posting a video about Sakura from Naruto and how we should stop the hate, man. We should stop hating Sakura. We should appreciate her instead.